Just before we start, just to remind everyone, we're here to talk about 5 ways to increase revenue through technology. My name's Tom Vamos, I'm the Digital Development Manager at Freeman, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by 4 panellists who know a lot more about this than I do. So guys, I'm going to ask you to sort of introduce yourselves. So first of all, James Hemmings.
My name's James, I'm the Architect Manager for Freeman and Acier.
Hi, my name's Debbie, I'm Director at Benchmark Collective.
Hi there guys, my name is Gardner, I'm Digital Sales Manager for Freeman.
Hello, I am Chloe Richardson and I'm an Exhibition Sales Strategy Consultant. Quite wordy, I know. Sorry, Tom.
No, that's great. Excellent, thanks everyone. So we're going to cover sort of 5 sections and we don't have a lot of time, so forgive me if it all seems a little bit rushed. So we're going to look at using data to drive strategic sales, increasing opportunity through design, using e-commerce to sell stand space, blending technology with expertise, and also freeing up time to sell more sponsorship, or indeed sell anything. So we all use technology anyway in the events business. This is what we're at this event for. But it's not just a tool, it can be a revenue stream, and or can be aid revenue. So that's what we're here to discuss. Let's look straight away at using data to drive strategic sales. So guys, in your lives, you all use data, be it in CRMs, be it in just keeping it in your head in spreadsheets. Who'd like to kick off telling me about how just day to day they use data for their for strategic sales in some way?
So at Benchmark, when we are advising our clients on best strategy for their rebooks, we obviously need to use data for that. We go back and look at things like average order value and client retention numbers, because that tells us a lot about what's been happening in that business with their sales. And then when it comes to delivering rebook projects on site, data is essential because it really does inform how we go about delivering that rebook in terms of clients' history with their events and their attendance at the event and the type of space that they take. So it's really important to us to have access to that data, to have an informed approach.
I can well imagine. And Adam, before you joined Freeman, you were at Messe Frankfurt, and presumably having to sort of use data to make your life a little easier?
Yeah, certainly. So when we were there, the kind of the key thing for us, particularly as we were looking to rebook, was doing a lot of analysis of data sets, particularly looking so we could strategize, making sure we had our key targets kind of secured earlier on. Equally looking at those exhibitors that had actually booked in fairly early in the process of the actual whole sales cycle, because they had that much greater investment into the show. So just using that kind of level of data really helped us be successful when we got on site. And data is king. So it's managing it correctly and using it to the best of your abilities, not being frightened of it though.
No, and I think not only is data king, but joining up, increasingly, I think we all know this, joining up various pots of data, is becoming increasingly easier and is also much more important in helping to profile potential delegates when we do our marketing campaigns. We're very lucky in an event like this, for example, that data can come from lead generation, it can come from session scanning, it can come from registration, etc. But when we have tools that allow us to put all this together, we can start to actually sort of profile people a bit more.
Thank you.
But as a moderator, I'm going to leave it to the panelists to talk about this in a little bit more detail. Let's go to increasing opportunity through design. And this I'm particularly talking about how we can take advantage of exhibition floor plans and manipulate them in certain ways to actually improve the situation for you guys as event organisers. But I'm going to ask James to talk a little bit about this.
Okay, so essentially this is the principle behind getting the most out of the space that you have in your venue that you're using for your exhibition. We would look to maximise things like revenue and yield in terms of space. We would look at the visitor flow to make sure people are being able to get around the show, being able to navigate it easily to get to all the exhibitors. We would look at the desirability of space, so we would look to create prime stand space, make sure that features are placed properly so that it attracts people. But then we'd also take into account things like the venue itself, sort of the sensitivity about how we position a floor plan in and around it, and then obviously as well with build up and breakdown in mind. we've done a number of these case studies. Most recently, we performed one for a show that took place in the Excel Centre in both the North and South Halls, and we increased their sellable space by about 6,000 square metres, so well over £1 million, and that was just by taking their floor plan, revamping it, absorbing all the unnecessary aisle space, cutting out dog legs, things like that. So there's a huge potential there, even for smaller shows such as this and elsewhere. So
I think from an on-site perspective as well, when you're looking at a show from a live point of view, whilst you're on-site actually rebooking, the design of a floor plan is really, really important, and actually having the ability then and there to be able to merge stands or cut stands, it really does help with regards to the sales as well. So the design comes in with both aspects.
And I think what I like about this one particularly, that this is not strictly talking about technology. In this case, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're actually drawing on venue knowledge and sort of personal expertise.
yeah, it is. It's about understanding what the regulations are for the venue, because each venue is different, and not everybody knows that. You know, you've got minimum aisle widths for certain venues. You've got egress you need to consider. You need to make sure that there's access points, emergency routes out, and things like that. So, and you only have to fulfil a certain number of those. You don't need to cover the whole hall in them. So you can absorb some space by removing aisles. It's as simple as that, essentially. So.
And do you find, this is open for anyone, do you find that if you can actually take the client's sort of well-intentioned original layout and improve it in some way, is there some sort of diplomacy required, or people do they sort of jump at the chance to see that there's sort of more space available?
I guess it's a balance, isn't it? Because essentially, I mean, if we increase someone's yield by 10%, they've got to be able to sell that 10% as well. Yeah. You know, it's a balance of over what the interest is for that show as sort of in line with what we can give them back. So we could maybe give them, 10,000 square metres of space extra, but they might not be able to fill that. And if there's empty space, then that has a negative impact upon the show. So you've got to balance the two things. Yeah. So it's about liaison with the client as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point actually. Guys, anyone else found they can sort of chip in on that one? In experience?
No, I think obviously working with James, the work that he does is exceptional. But the beauty, if you've got the right technology, and we're very fortunate in the one that, particularly in the software that we deliver, that whereas we can present the client the options for them to work with.
And what about
equally they can do those themselves as well and actually manage it as in flow. As Chloe mentioned, on-site when rebooking, they've got the ability to make those changes, be reactive and actually work with it. But then in the whole event cycle as well, just being aware of it and having the right tech that enables them to make those changes quickly, swiftly and effectively.
I guess it's not always just about more stand space, but creating different flows as well, potentially sort of subtly directing footfall.
It's certainly easier to sell a well-designed floor plan than it is one that is not.
That's a very, very good point. Guys, thank you. So I'm going to move on to our third point, using e-commerce to sell stand space. Now, we live in an age now where we're just used to buying things online, and I guess the world of selling stand space shouldn't be any different. I appreciate it's probably more expensive to buy a stand sometimes than it is to buy a book or a CD, but nevertheless, e-commerce has its place in selling stand space. Adam, would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it on the head. E-commerce, it's expected. Everybody in their everyday life uses some form of e-commerce. It's just a matter of fact. And I think the events industry has, particularly, it's generally been good in its embracing it, but with stand sales as a main point, we've probably been a little bit slow on the uptake of it. However, it's getting there now, and I think the key thing is exhibitors will generally do a lot of research themselves prior to committing to a show. So by activating an element of e-commerce, you're getting them at their prime moment as well. So when they are ready to make that decision, they have the ability to actually make the decision, actually commit financially to it. Now, that's not taking away the responsibility of a dedicated sales team within an events team, because they are still necessary for not only the ones that those exhibitors that aren't maybe willing to commit straight off the bat, but they're also there to increase those that have committed. So
Indeed.
I may be an exhibitor and I've taken a 9 square metre stand, where the sales team's job then is therefore to increase me to 15 square metre stand as an example.
Yeah.
But why not use it? It's there and people expect it, and it's not an unknown entity to them. So the fear factor of using, you buying a stand space, for instance, through a website or through a floor plan is gone. It's not. There's no problem with it. So use it and it'll increase everybody else's time.
Indeed. And Chloe, Debbie, working very specifically in sales, have you seen a role for e-commerce actually within a toolkit and not having to say to someone, okay, I just need to phone someone up and please send us a check and we'll get it cashed?
I've actually had some experience of that actually within a live event experience,
Uh-huh.
using e-commerce within the rebook scenario. So they not only reserve their space, but they then pay for it there live at the venue
Yeah.
through the tool that the sales team have. And I think there's a place for it if your audience is right for that.
Yes.
Sole traders and smaller events, it certainly makes a huge impact on that organiser if they're walking away with that revenue already paid through an e-commerce tool live on site.
I can imagine it doesn't let their decision making go cold as such. If you sort of
No, and sure, we work on that kind of in the moment, that's your best opportunity to secure that exhibitor, but
Yeah.
taking it one step further and using that e-commerce at event is quite an interesting idea. I think.
Yeah. Chloe, have you found that too? If you're sort of just getting that sale through a bit quicker, then you can do it all through the one tool?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would probably decrease the number of drop-offs post-show as well if you've got that money secured on site. That's definitely going to be a benefit long-term to the financial growth of a show or of an exhibition. But like Debbie said, it kind of is probably show dependent, and it would work especially well in some industries with some size shows, and maybe some would take a bit more time to change what they might traditionally have used to become more accustomed to sort of new habits.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point actually, because I think culturally there's a difference between certainly events in the States and events here in EMEA. We certainly find that in America it's almost expected, isn't it?
It is the expected. Our clients, particularly for us in the States, will generally make their show live, place it online, and just let the space sell itself. We had one recently where we had a $120,000 stand transaction went through. So as long as you've got a credit card balance that can do that, much like I imagine you do, Tom. So for us mere mortals, not. But yeah, it's that's kind of their psyche of it, is they know their audience want to exhibit, so they will put it out, and then it allows them as event organisers to focus their efforts on additional revenue streams, particularly. As I say, there's still a place there for them to get across the line those exhibitors that maybe aren't ready to fully commit, but it does allow them to look at alternative revenue opportunities.
And actually, I mean, you very slightly touched on it, but it does indeed free up the team to do other things as well, because it's almost become self-service, which is quite nice. We don't actually have to go and carry out the transaction ourselves. The exhibitor's gone and bought it straight away. Blending technology with expertise. So we touched on that a bit earlier when James largely was talking about maximising stand space. It's a bit technology, but it is essentially expertise. But also we find that, I think, in on-site rebooking. And I wondered, Debbie, I know this is something you're more than familiar with. If you could talk about the benefits of technology when it comes to on-site rebooking.
Yeah, I mean, there's huge efficiencies to be realised within a live on-site rebook if you use the right technology. Using the floor plan as the engine room of that rebook makes a huge difference for that team trying to deliver that rebook. But it is a blend of expertise and tech, for sure.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate enough to work with various providers looking after sales lounge hosting, because quite often it's an area that organisers they have their sales team out on the floor, but the lounge itself is either empty or it has a hostess on it who isn't able to take that exhibitor from hello through to contract and securing the stand.
No.
And some of the efficiencies that Chloe referred to earlier, like splitting stands or merging stands, to be able to do that there live with the right expertise managing that makes a huge difference to how that rebook delivers for that client.
So I totally get how for the individual transaction that's completely accelerated and effectively in the bag for next year. And I don't know if anyone wants to talk about if there's any ways that this also creates a sort of a bit of a buzz and a culture for let's get rebooking.
It's momentum.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you want to chip in, but it is about momentum. If your team are out on the floor with that live plan in front of that client, and it's the most transparent way of running your rebook.
Or a big screen up in real time,
both.
colours changing, the sold.
Both. And as they start to pass and see that.
I think it's human nature, isn't it? When you see something actually happening right in front of you, you feel more, it's more credible, you feel more involved, you feel more engaged, and that is, as a byproduct, going to produce more sales because people really want to get involved in that, and it's the buzz, like you said, Tom.
Yeah.
So I think it's really crucial, actually, having something on site that can give that sort of adrenaline and that momentum and that visual buzz.
And actually, it's really practical on a large event as well, because the fact, I'm sure Chloe can testify that there's a lot of time spent walking backwards and forwards to sales lounges when you're not running a digital floor plan and it's in the salespeople's hands, and that, in reality, makes quite a big time saving for them, and therefore more time to spend with clients.
Indeed.
And don't forget, we need to be sustainable, and lots of paper printouts aren't going to do anybody any favours.
No.
There you go.
No.
There's ever a reason to use tech.
That's very good. Thank you for getting some buzzwords in for us there. It's incredibly valuable. Now, I'm always struck by the benefits of the real-timeness of it all. And it sounds a bit mercenary, perhaps, that we actually want to create a fear of missing out, which I suppose in some ways means we're introducing a small sense of anxiety in a very nice way for our purposes, and we're slightly taking advantage of that, but for the benefit of everyone around, I think that those rebookings come in. I don't know, has anyone got any stats on sort of improved rebookings when we've had sort of real-time versus old-school type rebooking, sort of from a year on year?
So in a company I used to work for, I used to do a home office exhibition based in Farnborough. So in 2014, before we had what is now called Blueprint, essentially, we had a rebook of about 50% during the show. That was probably down to a lot of the points that have been raised by to and fro from marketing suites, not having a real-time floor plan, having to and fro with conversations, things like that. Compare that to 2015 when we got hold of Blueprint, we increased our rebook to 75% at the show. So, and that was about 300 exhibitors there and then at the show, with only another 100 or so to get for the following year. So it has a massive benefit. It also meant that we could minimise the staff. We didn't have to get people in to rebook. We could just do it with 2 people because we had a live floor plan at all times. So yeah, it has a great benefit, a big impact.
Excellent. Well, thanks for giving us some stats there as well. So I'm going to come to freeing up our final point before hopefully cut to some quick questions, and thanks everyone for submitting questions. Freeing up time using technology in our lives is hopefully freeing up time to sell. Well, I've written to sell more sponsorship, but to sell more stuff. Anyone like to talk to me about that?
Yeah, I think this is really important. So working in the trade show and exhibition industry, when I'm approached by clients who want to maybe redevelop their sales strategy or recreate a new rebooking process, the main objective for them is often, of course, revenue is really important and it's all about sort of the final numbers, but actually for them what they want to do is free up enough time for their sales team post-show to actually be able to go out and create more leads, to be able to go out and develop the show. And when you have certain technology or digital solutions in place that take away the slightly more time-consuming, monotonous tasks that are completely necessary, but if you can imagine removing time for your CRM data, removing time to send out those contract reminders, removing time to manage your floor plan, you are giving your sales team so much more time to actually maximize the revenue potential of that particular event. Whether that's through sponsorship, whether that's through lead generation, whether that's through additional revenue streams, you are presenting your sales team with the tools they need to be able to do that necessary time-consuming task, but actually have it done elsewhere, and they can therefore focus. Those that connect with me on LinkedIn, social media plug, will be aware that time efficiency and not being time poor is kind of the biggest priority for me in what I do with my customers. And that's sort of the main thing about having this type of tool, can really, really support that, and it can be a benefit to the whole sales team, to the revenue of the show, and to the development going forward of each exhibition.
Cheers, Chloe. What I'll do is actually, because people have been kind enough to submit questions, and they are marked in popularity, so let's look at the top one, which are the top 5 best practices in terms of floor plan design from your perspective that drive revenue. Let's just go for one each, if possible. James, you might be best equipped to...
Best practices. It really depends on the floor plan. I guess the main thing is to first understand the regulation for the venue you're in. There's no point in having 5 metre aisles, 5 metre wide aisles all over the place if you don't need to have them. You're wasting space essentially, and that's the main part of most floor plans is the amount of space that's been left in an aisle that could actually be absorbed into a step.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else can think of a good practice when it comes to design?
I think in terms of design, having on the floor plan your sort of higher footfall areas, your choice-based pricing within the design is really beneficial to sort of drive revenue, because you're giving exhibitors different options, which actually ultimately is giving them the choice so that the revenue comes in whilst you're on site.
I think it's also to go to site with your next year's plan well designed, reflecting what happened this year. A lot of times we go on site with huge, great big blocks that it's incredibly difficult to talk that through with the client.
I think the other one that we come up a lot, and it's something we're trying to push, is the floor plan design has to be planned ahead. So by that, the floor plan is there to be easy, consolidated or grown, and you can strategize that whole sales process around it. So kind of as you alluded to, you have those key points at the front, and then you know that once that's gone, then you can start opening up. But it's always forward thinking of, God forbid, if we don't sell it out, this is how we're going to be able to bring it in and without impacting the rest of the show. So it's just a bit of forward planning as well, save you a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Essentially, really important, use your features to create prime stand space and also drive traffic around the show. So this conference area is right smack bang in the middle of the show. It's surrounded by stands which are all effectively prime stand space, because they'll benefit from all the traffic that comes to this conference area and away from it for the entire 2 days. So don't put this in the corner where it's going to be out the way and nobody can see it, essentially, because you're not going to get the maximum benefit out of it.
Excellent, thanks James. So I think we've got time for just one more question. So in terms of popularity, how does GDPR influence your business? I'm happy to very quickly answer that. Basically, just follow the rules, and the rules are all out there. It's all about consent. You probably know this already. So the way it's impacted our business is, of course, that we just have to change all our software to adhere to all the consent rules and regulations. And it doesn't matter that, for example, Freeman is an American company. If there's one European delegate in that, then in the system, then that data has to be respected. So talk to your software people, make sure all the consent rules are adhered to. How are we doing for time? I'm not being flagged down just yet. How deep should you go with sponsor sales cooperation? What is your stance on co-creating the events with your main sponsors? Debbie or Chloe, would you have a view on that? I'm throwing this at you really, but...
I just noticed there's a screen down there. I'm thinking, what are you all looking at? What am I missing? How deep should you go with spot? Oh, that one's gone down. Does that mean we can replace it with another question, Tom?
Pick a question if you like.
How does event feedback impact your sales strategy? Is probably a decent question.
Yeah.
I think event feedback is super important, because at the end of the day, the exhibitors are your client and the visitors are their clients. And actually, if you don't constantly adapt your event to their benefit, then they're going to stop coming back, because it's all about that long-term goal, right? You don't want them to just come back for next year. You want them to come back for the next 10 years. So you need to take their feedback on board. What could you change about the show? What are they looking for? Is it more content? Is it different stand sizes? Is it a slightly different concept? And if you take that event feedback on board, it means you can constantly develop for the upcoming editions. I assume it slightly probably relates to floor plans as well, that question, maybe?
Yeah, you do. I mean, certainly for us, so there's feedback. Basically, 9 times out of 10 when we get involved is because they've had a problem. There has been a problem on site with that floor plan, whether it be build up, whether it be breakdown, whether the feedback has been, oh, you've had exhibitors saying we're not getting visitors coming. That's generally when people will start coming to us and say what's happening, and that's when we can start to look at it. So you do get that one. On the other one that we were about to talk about, I think it's actually quite a good question in terms of co-creating the events, and we do a lot of by nature we do a lot of agency work, so we are guided by the brand. We are doing work for them as the brand. As an event organizer though, I think yes, working with main sponsors is key, but not to lose sight of what your actual event is about. Your event is what it's for instance here it's all about event tech. If you work too closely with your main event sponsors, you risk just putting on a show for them. So fully embrace it, and work with sponsors and help them realise what they want to get from the show, but equally don't lose sight of your core strategy as well.
It's about promoting the industry, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's kind of why it's important to not ostracise other organisations by promoting one person as the sole main sort of co-creator of the event.
There's a little one at the bottom there, like, can sponsorship support new revenue streams on tech? Most definitely. I mean, within the software that we promote and sell, you have the ability to physically place sponsors' logos onto it, and we have experience with clients doing that over a whole event cycle, and recognising 5-figure sums for sponsorship opportunities just for that. So most definitely it does support revenue streams, and it is just thinking, particularly in the events industry, think outside the box, because your square metre rate or square foot rate is capped by the market. So you have to think of other ways of bringing in money.
Indeed. Guys, listen, thank you very much. And audience, thank you very much for sticking with us. I hope you found that particularly useful. Just like to thank my panellists, James, Debbie, Adam and Chloe. Guys, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.